Today I'll be discussing an example about allowances for credit losses. In the first scenario, we have an opening trade debtors balance of 10,000 Rand, as well as an opening balance of allowances for credit losses, which is calculated at 10% of the 10,000 Rand, thus 1,000 Rand. We also have during the year credit losses of 1,000 Rand, as well as debtors paying back 5,000 Rand. We will record these following transactions in the general journal just for demonstration. During the year, we said that there was a 1,000 credit loss, which means that the trade debtor could not afford to pay us 1,000 Rand. So we need to write this off as an expense by debiting credit loss by 1,000 Rand and crediting our trade debtor. However, also during the year, the trade debtor paid us back 5,000 Rand, so we need to recognize a debit to bank of 5,000 Rand, as well as de-recognize trade debtors by 5,000 Rand. The allowances for credit losses we said was calculated at 10% of the balance of the trade debtor. So the balance of the trade debtor will be the 10,000 Rand less the 5,000 Rand he's paid us back, as well as the 1,000 Rand we've written off, which will be calculated then as 400 Rand. However, we originally recorded the allowance at 1,000 Rand, so our adjustment to this allowance for credit losses will be to debit it by 600 Rand as well as credit the adjustment to allowances for credit losses. We will now show how this will look on the general ledger. On the trade debtors side, we will have recognized his opening balance as well as the amount we received in bank and as well as the amount we writ off due to credit losses. This will then result with the carrying amount, as I said earlier, of 4,000 Rand. The allowances for credit losses, as we said, the original balance was sitting at 1,000 Rand, which was equal to the 10% of the 10,000 Rand that he originally owed us. Then, as we worked out the closing balance of 400 Rand based on the 4,000 Rand owing at the end of the year, we were able to work out an adjustment to credit losses of 600 Rand. This amount will then now be recorded in the statement of financial position at the final amount of 3,600. As you can see in the notes, this amount consists of the gross trade receivables, which was the amount they were owing us at the end of the year being the 4,000, less the allowance for credit losses of 400, which was the closing balance. This will result in a final carrying amount for trade receivables of 3,600. In scenario 2, we're going to make the credit losses of naught, where unlike in example 1, the credit loss equal to the amount that we had estimated, being the allowance for credit losses. The opening balance will still be the same, as well as the amount of payment by the trade debtor. Again, as the credit loss is naught, we're not going to remove anything from the trade debtor's balance, but again we will record debit bank of 5,000 Rand, as well as remove this from the trade debtor's amount owing to us. The allowance for credit losses will now be calculated at 10% times the 5,000 Rand, which is the opening balance less the amount of the payments. As the original balance was sitting at 1,000 Rand, we will have to make an adjustment to the allowance of credit losses by 500 Rand, thus reducing the balance down to 500 Rand. This will look very similar in the general ledger again as we did in scenario 1. However, now there was obviously no credit loss, so our closing balance will be sitting at 5,000 Rand, as now our allowance will also now be sitting only at 500 Rand instead of the amount that we calculated previously. Again, we will show you how this looks in the statement of financial position, where we record the net amount from the trade receivables, which will now be 4,500. This will be because now the gross trade receivables will be sitting at 5,000 Rand, as well as the change to allowances for credit losses, which will now be 500 Rand, resulting in the net amount of 4,500. In scenario 3, we're going to make the credit losses of 2,000 Rand, which will exceed the original opening balance for the allowance of credit losses. Again, our opening balance will be the same for trade debtors, as well as the amount that the trade debtors paid us back during the year. This will look in the general journal pretty much the same as we've done previously, except now the credit loss will be 2,000 Rand. So this will result in the trade debtors owing us 2,000 Rand less. Again, there will be a difference in the calculation for allowance for credit losses, which is calculated on the balance of the closing amount of the trade debtors. This will be 10,000 Rand less 7,000 Rand times the 10%, which will be now what we'll need to record this allowance at. However, as we said earlier, the allowance was currently sitting at 1,000 Rand, whereas it needs to be sitting on 300 Rand. So this will result in adjustments of 700 Rand to the allowance. This again will look very similar in the general ledger. However, we would have recorded now a greater credit loss of 2,000 Rand, which will result in the carrying amount of 3,000 Rand. As we said again, the allowance for credit losses is calculated at 10% of the balance of trade debtors. As you can see, this will result in a 1,000 balance bring forward for the allowance for credit losses based on the 10,000 Rand originally owing to us by the trade debtor. Then again, at the end of the year, our closing balance will be calculated at 300 Rand, which is 3,000 Rand times the 10%. This will result in an adjustment of credit losses of 700 Rand. Again, the final trade receivables amount will be the net amount that we'll show inside the statement of financial position, which in this case will be 2,700 Rand. This again will consist of the gross amount, which will be 3,000 Rand, and then again the final allowances for credit losses amount, which will be calculated 10% of the closing gross trade receivables amount.